Welcome to Modern Animism, a holistic spiritual path. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, Laura Giles. As you probably know, Pan Society is a nature-based spiritual path. And this means that there's no God who tells you how to live or what's real. There's no God that judges you. And that can be really scary for some people because it also means that you have to rely on your own wisdom, the guidance of your community, and your experience of life to find your own path. And if you're new to this, don't have a community, and don't really know much about nature, that can seem like an impossible task. And that's what today's show is all about. I'll share some tips that can help. So let's get started by opening sacred space and giving gratitude. I acknowledge and thank the element of earth for the boundaries, food, home, stability, strong foundation, and community that sustains us all. Acknowledge and thank the element of air for inspiring us with ideas and for taking our words across the veil to our ancestors. Acknowledge and thank the element of fire for giving us the sun to keep us warm, to help the plants grow, and for giving life-giving essence that sustains us all. I thank you for the power we use to maintain our day-to-day life and create change. And thank you for the responsibility that keeps us in harmony with others and gives us balance. And I acknowledge the element of water and thank you for sustaining our lives and reminding us to go with the flow. I acknowledge and thank our loving, helping ancestors from the human, plant, animal, and mineral kingdoms. And I thank you all for the help that we receive that is seen and unseen. I'd like to thank our listeners, both old and new. We know your time is valuable and appreciate that you share yours with us. We appreciate the questions and comments and ask that you can continue to reach out with your thoughts as they do help us to stay in touch with you and in tune. And if any of our shows inspire or help you, please consider donating to help keep us going. There's a donate button on the website at www.pansociety.net, or you can donate from the Podbean app. And if you want to PayPal, you can do that at admin@pansociety.net or email me for the address to send a check. And of course, no amount is too big or too small. If money's an issue and you'd like to show your appreciation in some way, you can also help by liking, commenting, and sharing our posts on social media. This helps our stats so that we get better rankings in social media and can be more easily found. So that helps us to grow too. So you can always help in some kind of way. So nature-based religions, that might be a new idea to you. Basically, it encompasses all animist paths and most pagan paths. I would say all pagan paths, but I'm not quite sure about that, so I'll say most. And we essentially find wisdom, meaning, and answers by looking to nature. That's all that means, nature-based religion. So instead of what would Jesus or Buddha do, it's more like what would nature do, or what does nature do? Now, this is a little trickier than going to a book and looking up the answers or having a set of rules to follow that don't change because the wheel of life is always changing. So what's true in the summer may not be true in the winter. For example, if I say, wear shorts outside today, well, that's not going to work when it's 15 degrees. And I might look out the window and see my chickens walking together and think, birds of a feather flock together. Then I see my neighbors who are very different people together and I think, opposites attract. So both appear true, both are natural phenomenon, both are in nature, so how do I know which one is true? So how are you ever going to know which way to go when there's evidence that either option could be right now? How do you trust nature? Well, it's about the wheel of life. The wheel of life gives everything context, so there's not one right answer for all people at all times. What's true when you're 8 years old might not be true when you're 38. And what works for females might not work for guys. The beginning of something might look really different from the middle or the end. So I love using the wheel of life for this because if you want to understand animism, you really have to look at things holistically. It's not about just this thing that is happening to me today. It's about how this thing impacts me, my environment, now, the future, other people, my ancestors, the descendants, etc. I mean, like everything, because, we say everything is sacred. Sometimes I hear people talking about spirituality like it's about rituals or energy healing or talking with the spirits. And animism is bigger than that. Gotta think big. We acknowledge the plants, animals, minerals, humans, and ancestors because they're always acting on us, and we're always acting on them. So speaking this truth helps us to stay mindful of that. So if you're new to all of this and need a place to start, I said I talk about nature to help you dip your toe in because I think without some guidance, you could wander around lost while everything you need is all around you. Like starving in the presence of a buffet. So what do I mean? Well, for the 4th of July, I went to the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, and it's lovely. There's lots of waterfalls. There's tons of gorgeous flowers in bloom. There was also a ton of tourists everywhere. Traffic was moving at 20 miles an hour or slower, and I'm not kidding. And everywhere they were leaving trash, talking in really loud voices, just lots of excitement, and everybody's on top of each other. And there wasn't any solitary, quiet space anywhere. Now, that's cool. You can enjoy your space however you want. However, if you're there to get in tune with yourself, how much can you see like this? What messages can you glean when you're not present? You're not going to see the animals in the trees because they're going to scatter with all that noise. You won't notice the small, shy flowers because it's not noisy or showy enough to capture your attention. You probably won't see the small things like how ants can carry huge pieces of leaves or how bees are so productive as they fly out and back with the pollen for the hive. You have to be still and mindful to see that. Trust me. All you need to see is out there, so you just have to learn how to see it. It just won't come to you. You have to meet it halfway and be patient. Think of the vision quest. So guys would go out into the wilderness, and sometimes still do, alone and pray for a vision. And it could take days with no stimulation, no entertainment, and no food. Do you think after being still that long you would see something that's meant only for you and that could change your life? It's all there. You just have to learn to see it. And one of the most accessible ways to start is with the trees. They're almost everywhere. There are lots of different varieties. They usually don't smell bad like some animals and aren't dangerous like some animals. So even if you're allergic, it's usually only in the spring or fall, so it's safe for most people to get to know the trees. So take your time, pick one that you seem drawn to, go stand at the edge of the canopy, silently ask if it's okay to approach. Remember sovereignty, respect the tree's space. I know where I often walk, there are people who run, cycle, and walk right up to the trees, right over the roots without even acknowledging them. So they're just like objects. So the trees may feel shut down. Give them some time. If you don't get a feeling that it's okay to approach, come back another day. You're building a relationship. It takes time and trust. You wouldn't expect a wild cat or bird to just let you pick it up or pet it the first time, would you? Well, trees might not be that easy and open either. I know everybody just says, oh, hug a tree and go up to them. Oh, that's beautiful. And they're just like, let's get the giving tree, giving tree. That's not been my experience. Maybe you have a different one. I do believe in approaching everything with respect. So that's why I advise, wait for that green light. So once you get the green light, relax your expectations and use your senses. What do you see? Notice the veins in the leaves. Look at the way the light hits the trunk. Is there anything crawling on it or anything living on it? How does a bark look? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? Yeah, I said taste it. Just make sure that it's not toxic like a holly, elder, or yew. So you might want to do some recon in advance. So how does it sound? Yeah, I said sound. We think of it as silent, but why they put the microphone in the water? Or is microphone? Yeah, microphone in the water, and you could hear the seals. The whales, maybe seals too, singing. There's a lot of things that make noises. We just don't listen. I know lots of us tend to think that trees are kind of dead, but they have expressions and feelings and personalities like us. So listen to them. See if you can hear its voice, its respiration, or its characters and its sounds. Be willing to be where the tree is. If you expect it to be a person and do what you think it's going to do, or be what you think it's going to be, you're going to miss the treeness of trees. So it's basically like asking it to put on a mask so that it could be with you. And you would want somebody to do that with you. So this is going to mean surrendering what you think you know. This includes releasing what happened last time you were here. Today's a new day. Maybe it's a different time of day, or you're in a different mood, or maybe the tree's in a different mood. Slight shifts in temperature, wind, or sunlight can make a huge difference in the energy of a tree or a forest. My favorite time in a wood is either daybreak or dusk. The air feels very charged there. It's like potential, like anything can happen. It even smells different then. It feels to me like the energy is more open to penetration. It feels like the boundaries between plants, animals, the elements, and whatever else is out there is almost gone. Like you could reach out and touch things in a very energetic and more real way. It's just really tingly. And if you think about it, that makes sense because dawn and dusk are liminal time, so why shouldn't it feel that way? But feel free to experiment with this. If you have permission, run your hands along the bark. Meditate with your back against the tree. Hug the tree. Sit in a chair next to a tree. Stand on the roots if they're exposed and send love to it. Or you can ask it for a blessing. You can give it an offering. Actually, that's a really good idea if you're taking something away, that reciprocity thing. Give something back. And if you're sensitive, you might notice that any pain drains away. Maybe you're inspired with thought. Maybe your energy level expands. Or it could be lots of other things. You might also be surprised by how long the effect lasts. And once you do this a few times, you'll see that it's not just a fluke that you can dismiss like, oh, I was just in a good mood that day or something like that. No, it's the trees. Just trust me. Well, don't trust me. You'll experience it and then you'll see for yourself. So make notes. Your experiences will vary from tree to tree, species to species, place to place, time to time. There's going to be some similarities too, though. So being a curious student who takes great notes will lead to lots of surprising knowledge. And as you develop this, you can apply it to other plants, animals, humans, and minerals too. So trees are really great guides because they're long-lived. This means they see a lot of life and carry within them lots of wisdom. So unlike corn or annual flowers that only last a season, trees endure. They're symbols of power, wisdom, fertility, and life. In fact, one of the symbols that is found in most cultures is the tree of life. So it's said to be in different places, many places, the Garden of Eden, Turkey, Hungary, Scandinavia, India, Africa. Most ancient traditions have stories about it. The branches reach up into the spirit realm above, and the roots go down into the spirit world below, and we live in the middle, of course. And that's really an oversimplification. It really helps to know the folklore and mythology of a particular culture to help give it meaning. It's hard to talk about anything in anything but the most generic terms if the listener doesn't have the backstory. So I'll just touch on that and say, learn your mythology and folk tales. I think it's a huge shame that we don't really do this anymore. We do the whole it's just a dream or it's just a story thing with our kids, and then I don't know what age, like 10ish, we stop telling them stories, or we stop enforcing that curiosity. We encourage them to lose their imagination and lose their ability to touch magic and to embrace the unknown when we do this. So not only that, but we're hungry for it. Look at how big of a business the animated film business is. Have you been to the movies? There are as many adults there as there are kids, sometimes a lot more. So we are hungry for these stories, and hearing them told orally is a lot more impactful than watching them on the screen, because with movies, you don't have to engage your imagination. But that's what we're taught to do. Sit back and receive information rather than think for yourself. So with that little diversion and hopefully a strong suggestion that you start reading myths, legends, and stories of your ancestors, let's get back to the trees. So the world tree, or tree of life, I actually like to call it the tree of life. It's not the same species of tree all over. And that really makes sense, because all trees don't live everywhere. In the parts of the Americas, it's the spruce. The Norse tree is called Yggdrasil, and that's very famous. Lots of stories about that one. And she's an ash tree. For the Celts, it's the yew, and this makes sense because the yew is the only tree that can reproduce itself when the branches dip down and touch the ground. they can root there and grow another tree. And it's one of the oldest in Europe, and it's between 2,000 and 9,000 years old. Could you imagine that? A tree that's not anything that's 9,000 years old, that's living. Crazy, right? So we see that the tree blooms in the spring, flourishes in the summer, giving shelter and food to lots of animals, and then it begins to decline in the fall and appear dormant in the winter. Now, everybody knows that, but we don't really pay attention to it. But that's what we should be doing too. So we shouldn't be exactly going dormant, but definitely slowing down. And this is one of the ways that nature shows us how to live. It's a lesson in cycles. People can get wound up about change. We don't like uncertainty. We want to guard against ever being hungry, uncomfortable, scared. When life's just not like that, disruptions happen, like regularly. You can count on it. The tree just comes back. You can too. It trusts. You don't hear any fuss about it. It just does what it does. Even when it's not truly dead, its decline in the fall and winter reminds us that life is impermanent. It helps us to prepare to deal with it if we pay attention. So spring is the promise of renewal fulfilled. It's fertility. So many people take this for granted. They just assume that the grocery store shelves are always going to be full, so they waste food. They don't know anything about the process of making healthy soil, so they use chemical fertilizers. They overplant, if they plant anything at all, and overharvest. And don't let the land lie fallow ever. And these things create soils that don't support food growth and make food that isn't nutrient rich. So we're doing it all wrong. Nature tells us what to do, so just watch her. We see the same thing in people. Women have no relationship with their menstrual cycles. I can't tell you how many people it's like, oh, I don't know when my cycle is. Oh, the moon has something to do with my cycle. Yeah, for us the cycle is a curse and we just want it to go away. And that's our sign that we're fertile. So when we have PMS or other problems, we just medicate it so that the symptoms will stop. And that's like turning off the warning light in your car that says check engine. It's saying your body is in trouble. It's deteriorating. And let's not just do anything about it. So when it's time to have a baby and we can't, we're wondering why. Well, it might be too late at that point to try to do something. What might have been fixable by lifestyle or diet changes is now a huge problem. So when we take this type of knowledge into the outside world, we can make different choices. We can take better care of the land, our bodies, and our communities. The earth is such a beautiful self-balancing system. It doesn't need a whole lot of help, but it does need some. So as we do a better job, we can stop the decline in habitat and toxic lifestyles that we now have and make something better for our children. To do that, we need to learn from the past and get back in touch with nature so that our future choices are better ones for us, our two-legged, four-legged, flying, swimming, mineral, and plant brothers. We have to stop taking everything for granted, slow down, and get to know it again. I think a great practice is for giving thanks, too. It helps you to be mindful and pay attention to the interconnection of all things. For example, as I'm sitting here, I can see a hand-woven basket that I bought from some Amish women. This is no longer woods or reeds that were growing wild, but it's still alive. It says everything's alive. So if I wanted to use this for something or just admire it, because it's a lovely, strong basket, I could just say thanks. So thanks for what? Well, its beauty, certainly, its function, its big size, for helping to make my life a little easier. And just as those things are coming out of my mouth, I can already feel the energy shift around me. I can feel the connection between me and the basket change. So imagine doing that with your breakfast, traffic, the flowers that you pick that are on your table, or the person that you share your life with. Don't you think that the energy around you would change? How could it not? If a tree can shift the energy around you just by sitting next to it, don't you think your energy can shift that of your car, your kids, or your office mates? I do. When you go into a garden that you've cared for, don't you think those plants know that they're well loved? Do you think food that is lovingly cared for is more vibrant and alive? There are many studies done on this, so I can just tell you that it's definitely more nutritious And what's the harm in singing a song to your plants or spending a little more time watering or admiring your flowers? You know, I sing to my cacti. They grow when they're supposed to be dormant, so I know it matters. Not sure why they do that. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but they do that. So if you're someone who views nature as a resource to be exploited, maybe you can spend some time on a farm, get to know the pig or the cow that's going to be your food. Check out how hard they work to provide that food. My livestock guardian dogs protect my goats, rabbits, and chickens so that the coyotes and foxes don't get to them. My chickens lay eggs, of course, the goats give milk, and the bunnies are food. So everybody works together, and I know some say that it's cruel, but everything eats. If everything is alive, and the work is in figuring out how to honor the plant and the animal person who's going to be that food, you know, that's just the system. And when you give it a good, clean, healthy life, you know, I think you do that. You honor it. So let's look at nature with scientific eyes. I know some people do this. You know, we just want to understand it. If that's you, I invite you to go a little deeper and think in terms of relationship. Really, that's what animism is all about. You can think of it like getting to know a person, except that animals and plants aren't people. In fact, I think that animals suffer when we treat them as people and expect them to act as people. It's like me expecting you to live up to my desires of you as a person. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to have a mask put on them. You know, the scientist wants things to make sense and be comfortable, so he chops them up in parts. But we're all complicated and we're part of a system, so it takes time to get to know how these things work and feel. But I promise you, it's rewarding. Another type of approach that I see a lot of that doesn't really work too well is the dreamy idealist. And this person sees nature as a beautiful refuge. It's like the archetypal nature child. And this person suffers when there's a beach whale or oil spills. And yeah, I know it's horrible. It is. But seeing life as man against nature isn't very helpful. And it's not going to create that relationship that we need to feel connected. It's just going to help you to feel wounded. So I think that can only be achieved by observation, time, meaningful interaction, and the deep understanding that we're part of nature and she's part of us. It's indivisible. What happens to her happens to us. When we get there, then holy day celebrations like seeing the sun return in the winter solstice becomes a truly joyous event, not some obligatory ritual or some excuse to drink alcohol. So I guess what I'm saying is that I can't tell you what your experience is going to be like, and I can't tell you what the road there is going to be like, but I can give you some ways to find those answers for yourself. Ready? Get a pen and a notebook. So, write down. What season is it now? Write down some keywords that remind you of this time of year. For example, as I'm doing this podcast, it's summer. My keywords could be sunshine, heat, heart, red, blood, fire, swimming, watermelon, vacation, family, ice cream, fleas, daylilies, mosquitoes, roses, hummingbirds. You get the idea. Bats. Now do that for all the seasons so that you have a keyword wheel of life. It can include the elements, animals, directions, all of that. Just whatever feels right for you. Now, think of something that's unsettling or out of balance in your life right now. Look at your list of keywords and see if you can find out why. For example, you might say that your problem is not enough self-care. So you look to your wheel and see that you're burning a lot of fire energy and not resting enough. Well, that's kind of an obvious one. But it's not simply enough to know. You have to follow through with creating the remedy. And this is the part that people have problems with. So what's going to be probably earth or water energy to create that balance? If we go there, what would make us flow like earth or water? And then you go to your keyword and that can give you your answer. So see how that can be useful? I mean, it's kind of intellectual. It's very intellectual. So if you're an airy person, then that might really help you. Another way to use nature for creating meaning and finding solution is to take your problem to nature. So let's say you're having some physical problems. You can go for a walk in nature and ask, what is this illness trying to teach me? Now empty your mind and go for a walk. Just be mindful. Pay attention to what jumps out. And this is like a vision quest. Nature will provide the answer, but you have to see it when it appears. Don't just walk on by. So here's another idea that can take you a bit deeper. If you've studied mindfulness, you'll probably have done something like this before. So get a flower or some living thing that won't move and mindfully gaze at it. Set a timer for 5 minutes and observe this plant. You're probably going to notice the obvious stuff first. Then boredom is going to set in, but stay with it. You might get some judgments like, oh, this smells nice, or this side's not as healthy as the other side. So let your thoughts come and go and then release them. When they stop coming, a space will open up and you and the plant can just be. That's where you're going to be in the space of oneness with it. And once you have that appreciation, it's like crossing a threshold. You're not going to go back to being the way that you were. You just can't. And when you do this over and over with different things, or even the same thing, your whole world is going to expand, because that whole idea of everything is alive isn't going to just be words anymore. You will know it because you will have experienced it. And you can do this with your gods as well. If you have like a symbol or a statue or something that represents your gods, you can do this with your gods. You may have heard me say that I've never been lonely because there's this connection with something bigger. And this is what I'm talking about. When you step into this space, it's a game changer. It's just, I know I default to this thing, and it's like, maybe it sounds like a cop-out, where you get to this space where there's just no words to describe what you're talking about, but this is what it's like. The world is just really, really different. Okay, so experiment. Once you can do the mindfulness thing, you're thinking of the plants and animals differently, and you're engaging with respect. There's really no end to what you can learn, because that's kind of the foundation. And if you want to share your results, please comment. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Just remember, don't rush it. This can take months. So you got to be dedicated. Some plants are more shy than others. If you're not getting great results, try a different one. Come back to that one later. You know, it can take a lot of trust on your part. Maybe you're getting stuff and you be like, oh, it can't be that, and you just dismiss it. Trust. You can check it out later, but trust. And if you have a different background or are just skeptical, you know, that could take a while to overcome. But just open up to it. Don't compare your results with anyone else, and just enjoy the experience. You don't have to necessarily go to a farm or park. That seems like an obvious thing if you live in the city. But if you have a little patch of land, just sit in the windowsill or porch and watch whatever is natural within your view. Maybe you got pigeons or something you could look at. I used to live in a country cottage, and there was this field with cows just outside my window. And in the spring, there would be calves out there too. Sometimes I'd see ducks that were kind of far away. Well, the pond where they lived was kind of far away, so that was kind of unusual. But once I even saw a fox trotting across the field. I couldn't believe it. Oh my God, there's a freaking fox there. Every morning I would, that would be my TV. I'd sit in the windowsill and watch it and view it like it was my entertainment. And it really was entertaining. So when you're still in a part of the environment, the animals know. I've had deer walk right past who didn't even look up, you know, that they did. If you've ever spooked a deer, well, you can very easily walk up on a deer. I've done it a million times, and you know, you're all up on them, and then they go, wee, and then they run. But when you walk up on them, they're eating, and they just like stand there and just keep on eating. That's a pretty cool experience. And that happens a lot too. I've had the same thing happen with squirrels who were just a few feet away. You know, and it's happened with a hawk or an owl. They just know. They know they're safe. And it's a lovely space to be in when you're not adversaries with nature. You know, they know this person is not an enemy. They just know. And you do too. And I wish that for you, but you have to create it. I spent some time on a Native American reservation where everybody knew these things, like it was in their bones. They were horse and dog people. And it was a really different thing to observe than your typical pet experience that you see in mainstream society, because these were not pets. Here the people own their animals, but there it's just different. You know, I think pets, people depend on them and they're subservient to their owners. There's kind of like a hierarchy, but there it's more like they're friends or co-species, or not really that, companions maybe. I don't know, there's not a word for it, but they're friends. even though that's not the right word either, because it's not a master and owner thing, but there's a mutual respect of knowing and being that I guess is like an acknowledgement of all that's holy in each creature. And you just can't say that. You have to feel it. It might be a great idea, but until you experience it, you can't really do it naturally the way that they do. And that's what I want for you. It's an amazing experience. So we all live in different areas. There are different plants and animals and rocks all over the world. Knowing your local folklore can help a lot. It won't make your perception any keener, but it may help to explain what you're experiencing. So it may give you the words to understand it. You might be tempted to pretty it up, and I'm going to ask you to resist the temptation. Sometimes life is messy, ugly, or chaotic. Look at the old fairy tales. They were messy, ugly, and violent sometimes. That's part of it. There are lessons in that too, so just let it be as it is. It's a journey that can last a lifetime. If you have others who can do it with you, I promise it will make it so much more meaningful to reach out. And of course, we have the Facebook group. You can join us there, reach out there. The private one or the public one, either one. And if you want to deepen your practice of animism and want a mentor, you can check out pansociety.org, where Sherry and I are now offering mentoring. You can post questions on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the podcast, or email me at laura@pansociety.net. We love hearing from you. Just be sure to ask what you want to know, though. I just did a YouTube video on the importance of asking really great questions. And I think about what you really want to know, because I want to make sure that I give you the right answer. So going through that process of thinking, what do I really want to know, will help you to get focused and move forward. So let's close by sending gratitude to the elements and our loving, helping ancestors for being here. I thank you for joining us for this edition of the Modern Animism radio program. Again, don't forget to donate, as we do need your financial and emotional support, and you can do that on our website at www.pansociety.net. Thanks for tuning in. This is Laura Giles for Pan Society Radio. See you next week.